welcome to this special edition of the Portuguese Women in Tech podcast. This year we are talking about women in leadership, and this series is brought to you by Natixis in Portugal in honor of International Women's Day. My name is Inês Silva. I'm one of the founders of Portuguese Women in Tech. And today I have another Inês here with me,
Silva.
and Silva as well. We'll be talking about like her journey, her path to leadership from biochemistry to a career in technology. Inês Tavares Silva is a team leader in IT CIB at Natixis, and I think her story is super interesting for us to learn about, to be inspired, and to share with others. This is a podcast, is part of a series. We'll be interviewing other women, also with inspiring stories. But Inês is the first one, and I'm very excited with this conversation. Are you ready?
Yes, the Inês Silva's meet. This is awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool. Do you want to share with us a little bit about your, let's call it professional life, right? So you started studying biochemistry, you end up at Natixis working in tech. How has been your life journey from one point to the other?
It was a curvy road, a bumpy road. I went to biochemistry out of some very meaned pressure from my family. I really wanted to be a writer or a journalist or chat for a living, something around these lines. But at the time, it was, no, you need to study sciences in high school. So I went to sciences. And at the end, I tried again to go towards journalism, but no. So I tried pharmaceutical sciences. I failed, so I got into biochemistry. I liked chemistry and stuff like that. But as soon as I found myself in a lab, I thought, no, that's not for me. See, it's too closed. I couldn't really chat. I couldn't really meet new people. So I hated it with every fiber of my being. Unfortunately, it took me almost 3 years to admit that I was very, very unhappy. And it was my mom who pushed me to say, I don't like this here. That's when she told me, okay, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do circus, you can do circus. You can go to the cooking school. You can learn whatever you want. Come home. I was in Coimbra. Come home. You will be here this year. And you can decide where you go next. So I did. It was not easy. And eventually I decided I was going to try journalism again. So I applied to journalism, did all of the exams again. And I failed. And I got into political science and international relations. I loved it. So it was super interesting. I went to Lisbon to study. I had a really good time studying, which was completely new for me because I had been in massive effort the rest of my life. And I finished it and decided, very cool, enough with politics. I tried a related master's, but really didn't like it. So I decided I should go to work. And at this time, it was 2013. So working without pay was very common. And I didn't want to do this because I had already been in biochemistry wasting time. So I decided I wanted to work in a bank. And I tried to find work in a bank, which I did. So I stayed there for almost 7 years. But I really didn't like the job. It was too repetitive. After 1 year and a half, it was very boring to me to do the same tasks. I got super depressed. Called my parents again and said, I'm so unhappy. I need to do something. I think I'm going back to school. I want to study again. To which they said, yes, of course, do that. So I went, I did postgrad in governance and business intelligence. During this, I had some teachers that talked about technology. I got interested. I applied for the Masters of Information Systems Management. And halfway through, I asked to change to IT. So from the tasks that I was doing inside the same bank to IT. And this was on another company. After 6 months, I applied to Natixis and I moved from Lisbon to Porto.
Yeah, that's an interesting story, and I think it's very interesting because, like, when you hear your story, I think there's a few things that come to mind. And one of them, I think you are a clear example of that you didn't like school, but you like learning, right? So it seems like you have gone through school like multiple times, sometimes more successful than others, but clearly like you have been driven a lot by learning curiosity. And how do you see that?
The fact is that the times I was the most successful at school was when I really wanted to be there. Now it sounds obvious, but at the time it wasn't. I thought it was just a matter of effort and the fact that I was an okay student. I wasn't a bad student, but I heard all my life, oh, if you only applied yourself, Inês, imagine what you could do. Imagine what I can apply myself, but really it's for the things that interest me. So eventually I got from being like a mid student in a very bad student in biochemistry to a mid student in political science to one of the best students in my master. So it's really a matter of what you want to do and what you're interested in. And the effort is like an additional layer of it.
I think your parents also played an important role there, right? Even though I think in the beginning they forced you to go to science and to pharmaceutical sciences and then biochemistry, but I think later on, I think they were quite supportive in like the different career changes, let's call it this way, that you end up having.
Yeah, they were. I come from a very quite traditional family. I don't want to say very because it's maybe negative. So quite a traditional family. My mother is a doctor. My dad is a psychologist. My grandparents had also traditional careers. So when I said I wanted to be a writer or to chat for a living, they were horrified. And well, not exactly horrified, but they thought, no, this is... And eventually they saw I was really unhappy. And I'm usually a very happy person. So they could see this was really the bad path for me. And at the time that I finally assumed that I was not going to accomplish anything in biochemistry except for heartache, my mother supported me as well as my family. My stepdad supported me. And my father on the other side, he said, I always knew. I always knew this wasn't for you. So you see. And after all these years, sometimes I will find moments where they will tell me, no, we are proud of what you did. You gave up something, rightfully so. See, you were right to do this and it was brave. And I will be shocked. Yeah, you know what it was?
I'm curious, like, why didn't your father suggest that you become a psychologist? Because psychologists talk for a living, right?
I think he did at some point.
Okay.
He may have. But it wasn't taken seriously for me. So I was responsible for my choice after all, even when I was 18, 17.
I think that's a good, interesting point, because I feel like a lot of the times, and actually we were talking about it before, where a lot of the times people are like, they feel like it's a destiny, right? There's a fate, right? So they make a decision when they are 18. And for example, at Portuguese Women Tech, we see that a lot, where when we go to schools, we talk to the kids. First, they have no idea what they want to go, but they feel this very deep and very big pressure to make the right choice, right? Because they cannot change it later on. They cannot pursue different career paths. And a lot of the times what we try to do is to show them, like, for them to pursue a career in technology, for example, there are so many different paths and there's like no traditional path, let's say like this. But I think in your case, I think like you to make decisions, like you made your own decisions, you assume the risk, and then you took it from there, right? So it was on you. And I think that's something that a lot of the times people have a hard time doing.
Yeah, but first you need to discover it exists. When I was a teenager, it never even crossed my mind, oh, I could have a career in technology. I didn't care about technology. For example, I'm of a generation where boys would play video games. I never played a video game in my life until I was almost 30. It was not allowed. I didn't have brothers, so I never did. And it never crossed my mind that I could have a career where I actually can chat most of the time about important stuff, but it makes me happy, but in technology. And when you are 18, 17, it was my case, you feel like you are taking this decision and your whole life is going to be forever changed and you will never be able to back down and you will have to do this for the rest of your life. And that's just not true. You can do it. You can take a decision, try it on for a year, 6 months, then try something else, then maybe work, then maybe travel, then maybe study again. I've done all of those except for the traveling for work for now. And as you live, you learn. As you do something new, you learn something new. I was a teacher, for example, for 4 years while I was studying. I was an English teacher for children in primary school. And I discovered that I can really control a crowd, for example. So this is useful in other areas of my life, and I can use this transferable skill.
Yeah, like looking back, you can connect the dots and realize
Yes,
like how
absolutely.
those skills actually help you with what you are doing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's actually a very good point, because what I wanted to ask you now is about like your new role as a leader, as a team leader here at Natixis. It's like, and how does that connect with your loving of like meeting new people, connecting with people, talking with people? How does that help?
The way I see leadership, and this may not be the same for everybody, it's necessarily connected to being with people, talking with people, understanding what they're doing, what they want to do, how they are feeling, for example, trying to connect them. This is something that is, for me, very important. Trying to connect them with other people within the company, making them networking myself as I do it. So for me, it's really chatting for a living, but in a serious way.
Yeah. In terms of like, yeah, I'm not sure how long you have been in this position, but like, what have you learned from going to from a let's call it an operator to a manager now?
That's a very good question. It's been, I think I started in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, early 2022. Yes, I'm horrible with dates, but I think it was. And at the time, it was a very small team. I was a business analyst, so I did some of the chatting. And I was very lucky because I had a very small team with people I really trusted, who I still really trust. And this made the transition very easy. What I will say I learned is maybe studying politics is really good to do some corporate leadership. You learn some power structures that then spill over into corporates. This sounds a bit fishy as I say it, but you understand how power exists, how decision takes place, and that it exists without the people. See, it's not people who hold power. Power exists. The decision exists, and then someone needs to take it for themselves. So it's interesting to see corporate leadership at the light or with the light of some classical political notions.
No, I think like the different, not difference, like I think they can be quite similar, right? Even though the goals might be different, but I think like political leadership started before corporate leadership, right? In
Yeah.
terms of as a as a thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. Actually, the postgrad I did, when I enrolled, I reviewed the syllabus
For sure.
quickly, and I thought, oh, okay, cool. This is focused on military. This is interesting to me. I'm enrolling. It had like the I don't know how to say in English, but the boss of the Navy of Portugal as one of the teachers. And then I arrived and discovered it was in fact based on military concepts, but applied to the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
So it was super cool.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of like, if you look back at your younger self, like what do you wish you had known before?
In what concerns my professional career,
Yeah.
nothing. Because if I knew better, I would have gone straight down the path, and I would have lost some stuff that I gained by chance. Some skills that you gain by chance when you are searching, you are trying to do a lot of stuff, and you learn some skills. If I knew I could be here, I would have gone maybe to computer science, or I would have gone to management school, and I would have lost all of the rest that I did. Especially something I think is super helpful for my life and can help me a lot in the leadership role, which is knowing that failing, screwing up, which is what I did multiple times, is super okay. You can get up, start over. The world is not going to implode. You are not going to implode. You can do things differently. It's fine. You can fail.
I think that's an important message because as we were talking, I think a lot of the time, especially for younger people, right? They feel like they only have one chance. They need to make the decision, the first decision that needs to be the first time. And I also feel like another thing, and I think you are an example of that, because like when you decide to go back to school the third time, maybe, I think you were already like 7 years or even more into your professional career, and that's a situation where a lot of people feel like, okay, like I'm going to basically just give up on everything that I've built and now going into the unknown again. But the reality is like that made you where you are right now, right?
Yes, and I was so excited. I didn't care about that when I got in, because I did this all in public schools, so I had to apply and wait to see if I could go to the masters. For example, I had to do an interview. I was advised that maybe I wouldn't get in because the teachers were used to teaching guys from computer science, and how were they going to teach me because I didn't have the notions. And I was so excited to get in, to be able to be there and going to class and learning stuff that was completely new to me. And being able to do it, not failing as it could have been, that I didn't care that I was sleeping 5 hours or way older than my colleagues, or I didn't care about any of that. Just wanted to do it.
Along the way, do you have like some kind of like role models or mentors that helped you shape a little bit your path?
That's a tough one. I don't think a lot about role models. I bet my family has some weight. But sorry to disappoint, I really don't have a specific role model. I see stuff I want to not copy, but to inspire on in many people around me.
But that's okay. We can have many role models. Doesn't need to be just one, right?
Yeah.
You can just like pick and choose whatever makes most sense to you.
Precisely. So, for example, my mom is a role model. She had me very young. She did her studies with a small baby very young. Of course, she had help. But this is a role model for resilience, for example.
In terms of like going back to the leadership, and what do you think are like the main qualities that a leader needs to embody, and like how do you and again, and this also connects with role models, because I'm sure like along the way you also have met leaders that were like really good leaders with who you learn a lot, with who you can pick and choose those like characteristics, qualities, behaviors. Like, are there like how? If I ask you to think about the leader, what comes to mind, basically?
I like the idea of servant leadership. So I like this idea that a leader is someone who is there to support people he works with. I've had all kinds of leaders, from very bad to very good, during my short career. And the things I value the most is this sense that there is hierarchy formally, but there really isn't between people. They are able to exchange on the same level. And for me, also being humble and wanting to really listen what other people have to say. These are the most important for me, or at least are the ones I try actively to maintain, because those were the ones I valued as someone in operations, in my leaders. Also some, what's a good word for this? Not courage, but people who are not afraid to say what they think is right, people who will fight for their people. These are the ones that
is there like any book, because like some of the people that are listening to us might think about like maybe books, articles, videos, anything that inspire you, or that also connected with like those characteristics that you were mentioning, the active listening, the making a stand if needed?
This is a hard question. I don't know. I read, of course, Simon Sinek. It's very interesting, but
Actually, his definition of leadership is one that I like the most, where he says like, a leader is one that creates the context for the other people to shine.
yeah.
And I really like that definition.
Oh, yes, that's very important.
Yeah.
A leader is someone that will say your name even if you're not there. That will tell people what you did that was good.
In terms of like maybe one of last questions is just in terms of like I asked you before about advice that you like to that you like to give to your younger self. You said like, no, I don't, like I did, this path was the right path for me, right? So that's what you said, because like you end up like learning a lot, and now you can bring those learnings from different areas of your life to your current role. I think like we are seeing also a lot of like women now pursuing careers in technology, and now also becoming leaders in their fields. Is there any like recommendations or advice that you give these women that are now transition into a leadership position, or like how they should approach that leadership position?
Fearlessly, in my opinion. We shouldn't. I don't have exactly the right context to say this, because we are very invested in Natixis to have equality. But even in more traditional environments, don't talk in a low voice. You don't need to shout, but you need to make your stand clear. It's not acceptable to try and be smaller because we are women. And the second thing that I really think is, when you are a woman in leadership in an area where there's mostly men, you have an added responsibility of making way for more women to join. So we don't gatekeep. Leadership is to be equal between men and women. So I'm the only woman in this important meeting. Imagine, I want more women to come. I don't want to be the special person. So this is an added responsibility to all others that leadership entails normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's basically the main advice.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Inês. I think it was a nice conversation about leadership, and for me, I think it was like very inspiring also to listen to what you said. Like looking back, you are bringing all these learnings from what you are, the different experience that you had, and those learnings made you a better person, right? You could look back and say like, I wasted X number of years in biochemistry, or 3 years. You mentioned a little bit of that, but the reality is, I think all of that made you a better professional, and I think we should embrace more the fact that we come from different backgrounds, we all have different experiences, and instead of like ignoring those experiences, we need to try to understand like how can we use those experiences to make us better professionals in the roles that we are having, right? So I think that's super important. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we are now, so on the 8th of March, the day that this podcast is going to be launched, is International Women's Day. I think it's also an important day for us to remember that learning, supporting each other, and creating opportunities for more women, as you mentioned, in leadership and not only, I think is super important. So each of us, I think, have a role to play in that part, men and women, and I think to bring more women to leadership, but also to bring more girls to technology. I think that's so important. But thank you very much. This was the first episode of our new podcast. Thank you, Natixis in Portugal, for helping and supporting us with this podcast. And yeah, stay with us for more episodes. We'll be launching them soon. Thank you.
Thank you.